Briefly, I'll mention on the schedule, Dr. McAlvin I'll be introducing her in a minute. She'll be speaking until about 10:30. I have a 10-minute break, and then we'll have AI innovations. Two brave souls from Grayson College have volunteered to get up and do that. One of them, Dana Ford, is sick this morning. Our math Dana Ford. We have two Dana Fords, spelled exactly the same way. Yeah. Our math Dana Ford, she's sick, so she has submitted a video. So her innovation will be presented as a video. That will run 45 minutes for the presentations, innovation showcase. And then at 11:15, we will have perspectives, which was really one of the most popular sessions we had last year. And that will be three different employees from Grayson College just giving their perspective on how AI is affecting their disciplines. So that will be A.T. Thomas from IT will be talking about his perspective. And then we will hear from David James from our computer science department. And also we will hear from C.W. Harrell from the business department. They'll be giving their perspectives. What we're really going to see today is courage, because I know for sure, having looked at this topic of AI in education for the past 3 years, it's the most complicated topic I've ever had to deal with. I research it a lot. I go to webinars and seminars and symposiums and learn and research papers all the time, and which I really enjoy doing. But it's so complicated. I'm often sitting in my office. There's mornings when I'm sitting in my office, holding my head, going, "This is breaking my head." How are people going to learn this? So it takes a lot of courage for all of our presenters today to have taken this topic on, thought it through, seen how it affects their classes, taken feedback from it, and then it changes the next week or month. So thank you very much, everybody presenting today, for taking this on. Our teaching and learning department, like many in the world, has been transformed by AI in the past 3 years. To try to figure out, for me, my focus is on how AI is affecting cognition. And my most recent literature review of that is showing that our information on that is in early stages on how AI affects cognition. But it is transforming not all, but many teaching and learning departments. And every teaching and learning professional I know today is an AI expert, including knowing quite a bit about neural nets and how they operate in general. So I'm extremely excited to have Dr. McAlvin here today. I've been aware of her work for a couple of years. I did a brief presentation last summer on using her. She was the co-creator of the Bloom's taxonomy revised for AI. It's been a paradigm shift for me, and it follows well on last year's Learning Day, where Chris Geedy talked about a vision where we understand how AI augments human judgment. And so last year we started this conceptual framework of how to detect and how to discern human learning and human abilities from algorithmic and digital abilities and thinking. So we're following well on this today. Dr. McAlvin is the Associate Director of Faculty Development and Support at Oregon State University eCampus, where she has worked since 2018. She has her master's and PhD in English from the University of Oregon and has taught composition, research writing, and literature courses, both in person and online, before she discovered a passion for instructional design and faculty development. Dr. McAlvin has spent a lot of time discerning the role of generative AI in the college classroom. She previously co-edited a first-year composition reader called Minding the Body, a casebook for writers, and was awarded an Online Learning Consortium Emerging Scholar Fellowship to write about policy issues in digital accessibility. She has also served as the lead author on eCampus Bloom's Taxonomy Revised, which is something I have on my desk and think about every day almost, and 6 Pedagogical Moves for the AI Era. She's a proud, busy mom of a preschooler and, most importantly, mother of a Black rescue lab. Welcome, please give a warm welcome to Dr. Catherine McAlvin.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Todd. So great to be here with you all. I'm really excited to see North Texas for the first time. I've never been here before, and I was telling my 4-year-old early this morning about how beautiful it is. Todd to give you a sense of my background. I think the only thing I want to add kind of initially so that you all know is that I think about pretty much every problem that I encounter in the professional work of teaching and learning from an interdisciplinary perspective. So you heard that I have degrees in English. I am a trained dancer, I've been a longtime dance teacher and choreographer. That's why I'm going to be walking around today. I can't stand still. I have interests kind of across the spectrum. And that's really what's so interesting about AI. It's truly kind of an interdisciplinary problem that we're all up against. The other thing I'll just note is those of us that work in the teaching and learning space, none of us chose to spend all this time on AI. And I'm sure that none of you have chosen to spend all this time on AI either, right? This is something that was kind of unexpected, unanticipated, but we've got to grapple with it. And so I'm really excited to be here with you today to talk more about it. I also want to just mention up front a little bit about my position on AI of sorts. I don't subscribe to the hype that this is the greatest or the worst thing. I do think that we're on the cusp of really fundamental changes in higher education, though. And you'll hear a little bit about why I think that as we go today. I lose sleep over a lot of things these days, but general artificial intelligence, that notion that robots are going to come take our jobs and take over the world, is not something that I worry about at all. Current generative AI models are really sophisticated compared to that initial release of ChatGPT a couple of years ago, but they still produce a lot of what is often called slop, right? That yucky stuff that we're kind of shocked by sometimes, right? That slop does not move our world or our learners forward in any effective way. I really like this collage that a creator, Janet Tura, created. It's titled Ground Up and Spat Out, and there's a short description of it I want to share. Quote, the outputs of large language models do seem uncanny, often leading people to compare the abilities of these systems to thinking, dreaming, or hallucinating. This image is intended to be a tongue-in-cheek dig, suggesting that AI is at its core just a simple information meat grinder, feeding off the words, ideas, and images on the internet, chopping them up, and spitting them back out. The collage also makes the point that when we train these models on our biased, inequitable world, the responses we get cannot possibly differ from the biased and inequitable world that made them, end quote. So we have quite a challenge at hand as educators, right? But my approach with you today will be positive and proactive. I want to help you think really realistically and practically about things you can do to make your course or your courses more AI resilient, to make sure that learning is meaningful, regardless of whether or not you ultimately have your students actively use generative AI in your classes. So here's what we're going to do today. I have a few icebreaker questions for you. This is going to be kind of a temperature check of sorts on your thinking about AI. It can be interesting to see where you stand among your colleagues that are here today. When a large group is gathered like this, what a great opportunity, right? And you'll also give me some important information that I'll use as we go, okay? Then I'll lay out some framing ideas for where we stand with AI in higher education today and where we might be going. I'll share our AI resilience framework that's really new. Bloom's taxonomy is a part of that. And we're going to do a couple of applied exercises. That's why you're sitting with folks in your pathways today, so that you have a chance to think with some disciplinary thinking involved, what you might do, what others are thinking, what others are planning, right? And then we'll do some share outs. And then because this AI resilience framework is bigger than just the Bloom's taxonomy revisited resource that Todd mentioned, kind of step back too and think about other things you might do that aren't necessarily about the curriculum in terms of designing and teaching your courses to make them more AI resilient. I will do my best to reserve some time for a debrief at the end. We're going to dig pretty deep when you're looking at like a learning outcome from your course and the task and the activities and the assessments that might be associated with them. We're going to get pretty granular. But in a group like this, it's really, really effective to sort of zoom out at the end and think about, okay, what did we learn today? Importantly, what questions maybe have come up today that you need to continue talking about with your colleagues? Because I wish I could bring my magic wand today, but I didn't, right? There's no easy fix around AI. So part of my goal is to plant some seeds for you all in terms of the conversations you'll have after today. And of course, next steps. Hopefully you're going to walk away today with something really practical that you can try and do. And that'll be time to ask me questions as well. Okay. So let's try these icebreakers. The first couple are just going to be by show of hands. I'm going to give you a couple options. And then we're going to move around the room for the last one if we can. But let's do this first one. What do you feel like your level of expertise is with AI? Do you feel like you're beginning? Are you exploring? Are you integrating? Are you innovating? Are you leading in this space? Okay. All right. Who thinks they're beginning? Okay. Exploring. Okay. Integrating. Good. Innovating. And leading. Okay. That spectrum is very much what I would imagine. Most groups that I work with are all the way across the spectrum. So no surprise there. Okay. Here's a fun one. What is your overall perspective on AI in higher education? Positive, neutral, or negative? All right, let's do our positives. Where are our tech optimists in the room? There they are. Okay, we have some. That's good. All right, what about neutral? Interesting. Okay. And who's on the net negative side? Okay. The chuckles mean you know who those people are, right? Okay. I'm actually a little bit surprised that we didn't have more people say negative. There's been some wide research, survey research done with faculty. The American Association of Colleges and Universities and Elon University did a faculty survey in late 2025. So this is still pretty recent information. And they found that 90% of faculty think that Gen AI will diminish students' critical thinking skills, and 95% of faculty said that Gen AI's impact will increase students' over-reliance on those tools, right? Those things are things that usually scare us in higher education, right? We think we're here to support students' critical thinking skills, to never be over-reliant on anybody else or any other tool, right? So you're in good company if you do think that this is negative, or if you think that it's neutral. There might be some positives. We'll see if we can unearth some of that today. All right, here's where we're going to move around. We do active learning, right? This is active learning. Okay, so I'm going to give you 4 choices on this one. Where are you at with AI in your teaching specifically? Are you trying to regulate it? Are you trying to adapt? Are you trying to integrate it? Or are you trying to reimagine what's going on? Okay. Let's do, I think it's going to make most sense to do regulating, kind of adapting along the wall into the corner, integrating back there, reimagining. As you are able, go to the space that represents where you are at.
Going to it again.
Good idea.
You're probably character building.
Yes, ma'am. We're just all making. Okay. We're all making. Yeah, he's like, yeah. You covered the whole room. Okay. This is also, I think, fairly usual for what I would expect with a faculty group, right? Lots of folks are still trying to figure out and kind of grapple with initially, what are we doing? How do we regulate student use of it? Adapting is kind of the next stage of that. These are sort of, it's meant to sort of be a spectrum, though I've had faculty argue with me that these are not like individual discrete phases, or they always go in order. You might bounce back and forth between these. Depending on the course you're teaching or across terms, depending on what's going on with AI, right? But we've got folks all across the spectrum. Now we're gonna do one more. Here's the really interesting one, I think. Where do you want to be in 2 years? You can choose to pick, or you can choose to move. Regulating, adapting, integrating, reenacting. Each one of these here. Okay, I see a shift. Where is that? Where's the retire? I keep getting asked, where's the group to retire? Yes. I've actually heard that more about the coming Title II accessibility regulation than about AI. Okay. Anybody want to comment on what just happened here? What did we see in the shift? Did this surprise you? Is this something you'd expect, given what you know about your colleagues, about your institution? Anybody want to comment?
It's interesting. I know.
Okay, so you were looking at individuals and who moved and who didn't. Okay.
As far as like, just.
Right. Were disciplines moving together? Were you in the same place before and you shifted together? Okay. Again, this is why some of this is such a disciplinary specific question, right? Different disciplines need to grapple with AI in different ways, but it's really interesting to see what's happening so that if your students go from class to class across disciplines, you know what they might be encountering, right? You might be able to help your colleagues across disciplines solve some challenges around AI in unique ways. Those are the kinds of things we'll try to surface today with some examples. And I was so excited to hear about the faculty presentations to come because those are really, really important. Okay, thank you for indulging me in moving around. You can go back to your I didn't want to give a loose too soon. You might have to get out. We're gonna go a little bit. I have to leave. Okay, we're bringing around a hard copy of Luke's taxonomy. You don't need it yet. I don't have a good opportunity to share it. You don't need the paper that's coming around quite yet, but if you haven't seen it before, you can keep it. Before we move on, I want to spend just a little bit of time framing some ideas for you all around where we are with generative AI right now and where we might be headed. One of the things that you've probably noticed by now is that AI is pretty ubiquitous and it's getting really challenging to opt out at this point. AI, kind of plain old AI, has been around for a long time. But generative AI features are getting woven into all kinds of different applications and workflows. Okay? Tech companies want to get their products out in the world. They're monetizing these things. So the default is to opt us in. Did anybody here actually click a button that said, yes, I want that really terrible Google AI summary that shows up every time I Google something? No hands raised. Okay. We've had students at OSU say, please tell me, how can I turn that off? I never wanted that. It's really horrible right now. Right. Another thing I think is worth calling out is that we're all encountering AI, but so are our students. They're encountering it in their personal lives and at work. It's in the news. Students might be talking about implications around AI with their families, especially if they've got young kids who are trying to navigate what this means in K-12 schooling, right? They might be wondering about data privacy, might already be seeing it pop up at work. Students are looking to their faculty for answers. You all are trusted people in their lives. They want to know about, should they use AI? Is AI changing our field? Will I even have a job when I graduate? These are tough questions. They're looking to you all for some at least initial answers, or at least your thoughts about these things. Also worth calling out is that a lot of students feel negatively about AI. I've seen, at least at my own institution, a lot of faculty assume that students are, because they're digital natives, are just going to jump on the bandwagon for whatever new AI tool comes out wherever they already live in the digital world, right? We've actually found from surveying our students that that's not at all the case. We surveyed them and 55% said they were concerned, though it's worth noting that 63% said they were curious. There's kind of an interesting tension there. We had this really fun question. We didn't anticipate how hard it would be to analyze it after we got the results back. We let them write in their feelings about AI. Thankfully, we are lucky to have a research unit that codes these things for us. 53 out of 54 emotions that they wrote in were negative, and strongly so. Okay. So they're worried about it. Many of you are worried about it. We're actually kind of in the same place as our students, which I think is worth calling out. And then I've kind of had side conversations with a number of you about this already, right? Workforce needs and expectations are changing, but the caveat is that it's a little bit uneven. LinkedIn had an early job market report already in 2026 that indicated that the number of job postings with AI-related skills like AI literacy were up 70%. Only a few sectors are getting hit hard with decreased demand for entry-level work. Software engineering is usually the example that comes up, right? Other fields have changing job outlooks, not just because of AI, but because of other macroeconomic factors. So the direct impact of AI is still a little bit hard to sort out. But LinkedIn points out in their report that more employers seem to be looking for a blend of technical fluency and distinctly human capabilities. It feels like we can hang our hat on that a little bit, right? This is something our students need to know about, but the human parts of learning and work are still important. So that takes us a little bit into my prognostications. These are mine, but we're far enough into this age of generative AI that I have some evidence for the things that I'm saying. AI literacy is a critical personal, professional, and civic skill. So I just mentioned how we've seen some indications already. Employers want students entering the workforce having AI literacy skills. I think the importance of this skill set goes well beyond what we're just preparing students for in the workplace. Students need to know about how these algorithms work, where bias and misinformation might pop up. How do they keep their personal and their family's data secure? These are big, big things right now. We also need citizens in our country who know something about the issues that AI raise, so collectively we can adopt them in an ethical and thoughtful way. That's that civic piece. We're going to talk in some detail about cognitive offloading today. This is already a problem. I don't see any signs that it won't continue to be a problem. If you haven't heard this term before, it's basically kind of a catch-all for when students go to an AI tool to do the work for them in whole or in part. We don't have to necessarily assign judgment. Cognitive offloading can be intentional or unintentional. We'll talk about that in a moment. But basically, we need to think about how to structure learning differently so that we can track a student's learning journey, really see where the learning is happening across their life cycle at our institutions. Okay, here's my fun one. Strong course design and instruction is no longer optional. For quite some time, higher ed has had this delightful body of research called the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning. It's research-based information about how students learn, right? We know what works. But as higher ed, did anybody here get to go to teaching training when you were going through your career? Like required? Yeah, only a handful of us. I was in that really lucky group. I had to do mandatory pedagogy classes. I had to student teach in a college classroom before I was allowed to have my own class. It sounded really horrible at the time, but I'm so grateful that I went through that experience, right? Many of us were not trained in this. Now's the time to get a sense of how learning works, what your learners need. One really small but important piece of this is that we know from this body of research that human learning is a social endeavor. Our students learn best with, among, and from peers and with a human teacher guiding them. AI can't replicate that. AI is not going to build those relationships and trust that underpin really meaningful learning. AI is really good at telling you what you want to hear. Is that going to help our students? Really, right? And unless prompted really, really well, it's not even good at representing different viewpoints or different kinds of human experience, right? So we still need humans in education. So for that reason, I don't think any of your jobs are going away. Maybe that's my best news for you today. I actually have colleagues who say the AI is the very best thing that's ever happened in higher education. And the reason they say that is we're going to have to do the things that we really need to do, but it's going to be better for our students. We're going to be better delivering on the value proposition around degrees and credentials that we offer. Okay, so now's the time. I want to say a little bit more about cognitive offloading, because this gets to the heart of why the choices you make when you design and teach a course really matter. There's lots of reasons why a student might engage in cognitive offloading. Like I said before, it could be intentional or unintentional. A lot of the reasons mirror all the things we sort of thought about with cheating or academic misconduct pre-AI. When I'm talking to faculty at my own institution, we teach a lot of adult learners. Our average age is 31. And a lot of the reasons that we're starting to talk about cognitive offloading coming up are things like our students are really pressed for time. They kind of got put in a corner, right? They think the task is busy work, even if we don't. And they may get stuck and for whatever reason may not want to seek their faculty's help to move forward. Are there any reasons why you all have seen your students maybe start engaging in some cognitive offloading? Why might they go to an AI tool instead of do the work? Yes, in the back.
They don't actually see the value of the course itself in the future.
Good. I'm going to just repeat for the sake of the recording. You don't see the value of the course and in total, right? For their learning or for their future. Yeah, that's a good one. So it's not just the task itself is busy work. They think the whole class is busy work. Yes.
They feel intimidated by their peers' level of knowledge, feel like they needed to bring themselves up to their peers.
Indeed, right. Intimidated by their level of peers' knowledge. We've actually heard from students, and this one actually surprised me when we heard this. They perceived that their peers were using AI and had an advantage, and therefore, if they didn't use it, they were going to be at a disadvantage. Not my favorite reason for using it, but there it is. Yes.
A lot of them think that the AI will do a better job at the task than they are able to do.
Yes, they think AI will do a better job. Who's seen this come up with writing skills? Right? A lot of students lack a lot of, well, they may or may not actually lack the skill set, right? They may just lack the confidence and they think that a tool is going to do a better job for them. Right. Okay, thank you for those. Those are all really good. I think of those moments It's kind of opportunities for cognitive offloading, like off ramps on a freeway, right? There's this kind of moment of possibility. They can either continue forward the way you intended them to, or they take the exit. So our job as educators is to think about how to minimize those off ramps on the freeway. Those are the things we're going to be talking about relative to AI resilience, minimizing those off ramps. By the way, our generative AI tool, our institutionally supported generative AI tool at Oregon State is Microsoft Copilot. Not my favorite tool, but it's what we got. I asked it to create me basically an illustration of cognitive offloading as off ramps. This is what I got. I think my eyes about fell out of my head when I saw this. It's terrible in terms of like the color palette, right? Actually, I had to revise it a few times. I ended up liking this version the best at the end because that orange is so terrible. It calls attention to the road, right? The road is what you lay out for your students to learn. That's what it is when you're designing a course. You're laying out that road for learning. I did not ask Copilot to do this, but I did end up liking the fact that that off ramp, that exit, literally turns around and goes 180 degrees in the opposite direction. That's sometimes what it feels like when our students misuse AI, right? They're totally undercutting their own opportunity to learn. So in the end, I like this one. All right, let's start talking into this framework for AI resiliency. This is a really new thing that I led the design of this year. And it aims to surface the most important pedagogical moves that you may want to do, at least consider, to ensure AI resiliency. Because I work for eCampus, we're a division that works specifically with our online faculty. We had online learning in mind, but really this works for any modality. There's no reason it can't. Okay, so if you teach in person, it should work for you just fine. I'll show you the full framework in just a moment. Before we go there, I want you to think a little bit about roles and the things that are within the scope of your control. The framework breaks out 3 roles and an associated pathway for each. So there's a piece for program administrators, a piece for faculty course designers, so for those of you that design your courses, and instructors, so those of you who are actually teaching in the classroom. At OSU, we sometimes design online courses with faculty who will never end up teaching that course. And we have lots of faculty who teach a course they didn't design. Does that make sense? So we had to break these out. But even if you see yourself in that dual role of designer and instructor, it's really helpful to think about both opportunities separately because you might make different choices as you're planning a course versus when you're actually in the classroom with your students, okay? What makes our framework unique is showing how different actions across these roles are interrelated. We wanted to underscore how important it is to not just think about AI resilience at the course level, but to think programmatically, think across your program. This is again why you're sitting in your pathways today. At OSU, we sometimes hear from students how as they go from class to class, even within a program, it's kind of disoriented, or I've heard the term whiplash come up because faculty have such different perspectives on AI and course policies on AI. Their students are like, wait, what's going on? There's kind of no cohesion. So we were aiming for more cohesion across programs, but with attention to details at that course level. So through a pretty extensive literature review of current research and emerging best practices, we've identified 6 essential pedagogical moves that online educators and in-person educators should adopt to respond proactively and sustainably to the realities of generative AI. Under this approach, and this is really important, integrity is a structural feature, not an add-on. It's thoughtful design, not just kind of band-aids that we're trying to put on things because of Gen AI. Embedded throughout the framework are proactive strategies to support meaningful learning, valid assessment, and a reorientation of all the things we do at our institution toward the fact that AI is here to stay, whether or not we like that. I can't even say that this framework is hot off the press because it's not even published yet. It's done. Our web design team is still working on it. So I already have a short link. I'll share the slides with Todd and he can distribute them. But you'll be able to get to it fairly soon, maybe within the next week. But this work I think is really important and frames some of the questions I know that you all are asking here. So I wanted to bring it to you even though it's not fully available yet. So we fashioned just to make it pretty, we fashioned these 6 different moves, if you will, into a hexagon. The 6 that we'll talk about at least in part today are evaluate and revise learning outcomes, develop and guide student AI literacy, refine assessments and rubrics, create and reinforce policies, motivate students, and then the kind of continuous improvement ones, review, reflect, and revise. We're going to look together in some detail at the evaluate and revise learning outcomes one, because that's where we think we can think a little bit about curriculum, and we'll look at Bloom's together in just a minute. So this is the full move for that first one, move 1 of 6. I want to kind of explain what's going on here because there's a lot, and I'll read it a little bit because I know this is a little small for those of you in the back. So again, we have the 3 pathways, right? The left-hand box is for program administrators. The one in the middle is for folks who design courses. The one on the right is for folks who teach. Okay. I should also note that we found a lot of different kind of discrete strategies that we wanted to work into each move. And we know you all are busy. You're really busy. This is one thing among many you're trying to work on right now. So we did make an effort to prioritize and italicize at the top of each box the one, or in some cases there's a couple, that we think are the most critical to do first. Okay, so if we look at the program redesign path one, ideally, one thing you would consider is identifying program or course learning outcomes that need curricular revision because of AI. Maybe something has changed, right? Maybe students aren't doing the same kinds of work anymore because of AI. Or maybe the field is just growing in such a way where students need to be able to use AI. You can start looking at it. Another option, develop a program level strategy for student AI use and fluency development based on program and or course learning outcomes. Solicit industry perspectives to inform program and course level outcomes. I know that many of you are doing this already. That's great. And then review course redesign paths to proactively prepare for course revisions. This speaks a little bit to our internal processes at OSU, but it's really gearing you up to think about review and revision being cyclical. What does that look like? How do we plan for it rather than have AI spring something upon us every now and again? Let's look at that middle column. So the course redesign path. So again, this is for folks who design courses. Review course learning outcomes against Bloom's taxonomy revisited. That's that resource in front of you we'll look at together in a minute to determine where student AI use may and may not promote learning. Add aligned module or unit level learning outcomes to support student AI fluency development if you're allowed to do that. And start incorporating those industry perspectives and account for authentic career preparation pathways and learning outcomes. Okay, and then finally in that third box, so again, thinking about when you're actually in the classroom, online or in person with your student, we basically have a repeat of Bloom's, and we'll look at it a little bit, how it can be used to think about design and about instruction. There's things that you're doing to guide your students as they're learning that Bloom's taxonomy may help you to make some choices around. Okay, so let's look at Bloom's. This is that thing in front of you. I do have a QR code and a short link on the slide if you want to go to the web version. Exactly the same, but it's prettier, you know. Bookmark it if you like. Okay, so Bloom's taxonomy. Who's familiar with Bloom's taxonomy? Most of you. Okay, good. For those of you who may not have seen it before, this is a framework that's been around for quite some time. And what it aims to do is basically bucket different levels of cognitive skills. You may have encountered this if somebody ever told you, hey, let's make sure your learning outcomes are meaningful. And let's make sure we can identify kind of what level of cognitive work your students are doing to achieve that learning outcome. That's where Bloom's comes in. Okay. Bloom's rightly has been critiqued quite a bit. It is not a perfect framework because learning development does not always sort of move up this hierarchy. Many interpretations of Bloom's say that remember is kind of the lowest order of thinking, understand is a little bit more complicated, and so on up the pyramid. That's not always how learning plays out. You could certainly have students doing analytical or evaluative work that's more complex than creating something really simple and create sets on top of this, right? So don't necessarily take it as this is sort of a perfect progression from lower level skills to higher order thinking. but it can be. I'll just leave it at that. Nevertheless, this is such a common framework in education in general and in higher education as well, that we thought it would be useful for looking at AI. So a couple of years ago, not too long after ChatGPT came out, this wild idea in the middle of the night, wouldn't it be great if we map what AI can do to Blues? And that's where version 1 came from. You're actually looking at version 2, which is slightly different. We can get into why if you have questions, but let me just kind of show you what we're up to with version 2. So we've got the Bloom structure, right? We've got these 6 levels, these buckets, if you will, of different cognitive levels of thinking. On the technically middle column, labeled distinctive human skills, that's where, based on fairly extensive internal research that we did, but also some published research, we've tried to articulate what's still human at these different levels. What can AI not do? Okay. That far right-hand column is things that Gen AI can do, at least at this moment. Things could change, so it's worth thinking about that, right? What we were trying to do with this version is offer you a couple of different ways to rethink what's going on in your curriculum. Okay, so let's go back to that icebreaker, the last icebreaker question where I made you move around, right? I gave you 4 options: regulating, adapting, integrating, and reimagining. Let me just walk you through really fast. If we're in that regulating group, maybe on the verge of adapting, how you might use something like this. You might be looking really specifically at that distinctive human skills column. That's the place where you're going to emphasize the things your students are doing. You might even weight the work differently, right? Because if you know AI can't do that stuff in your grading criteria, in the way you allocate points on a rubric, you could emphasize those things because students can't just run to AI and do it for them. Okay. Let's say that you are in maybe the adapting group, maybe the integrating group. This is where you're going to be looking toward that right-hand column. How could you maybe open the door to students beginning to use a little bit of AI in your class, right? Where would it make sense to maybe have them down a little bit? Where will they come back, use their own brains to do more work, right? So you might see this as sort of a back and forth. Maybe a student brainstorms with AI and then they do a little more work with it. They ask it a few questions to help refine it. They create that final piece. You'd be looking across those 2 columns, right? If you are in that reimagining group, I would suggest you think about this even differently, okay? Instead of thinking about these 2 columns as kind of a back and forth, you might think about them as more integrated, right? Because what we're probably moving toward, and this is a little bit of my personal opinion, is that assignments will truly kind of integrate AI, not in kind of a back and forth way, but holistically, right? So you might look at both columns, but truly try to work between them instead of going back and forth among them. Okay. Are there any, I just want to leave space for just a minute to see if there's any questions about the resource before we try to do so.
On that website, can there be like examples, by discipline on what that might look like, or are there samples? I'm just saying, like, sometimes kind of hard to conceive of, okay, how would I do, like, I use it some in my classes, and I'm worried that I'm showing them something that it's gonna make them use this as more like a crutch instead of,
Totally. Really good point. These are fairly discipline specific. We don't have examples, but we're going to generate those in just a minute. So hopefully that'll help you. And we'll try to share these too, because it's helpful to hear from colleagues. Is there another question in the back? Yes.
So I have a question. So I have students now who use AI to generate testing materials so that they can assess their skills. So they'll feed some of my course content into an AI tool like an LLM of some sort, and then it will regurgitate them back questions and assess it. Right now, I don't officially endorse it because of the tendency of these large language models to produce erroneous information that would then lead them to wrong answers. That's so my concern is always how do we deal with the official incorporation of AI, which then might lead students to incorrect information. Having officially endorsed this ourselves, that kind of makes us responsible then for their wrong answers.
Thank you for giving me a sticky question right in the middle. There is no bad answer to this. There's actually a lot of things going on there. One is, it is a perfectly valid perspective as a faculty to say, I don't want you to do that, that's my intellectual property. You can't take that, students, right? Having students use an LLM in that way has been shown to be moderately effective, but you're right, if you don't have control over it, what exactly they're getting out of it, right? I didn't work this one in earlier, but now you're gonna get to the answer, Catherine, back in 8 again. I think we're moving toward a world where we have really specific AI chatbots deployed in our classes, the faculty design. It's gonna take a long time to get there because we all need budget for that, and that's not inexpensive, right? But the ideal world would be, yes, your students do that, but you've created the mini model in which they do that work. So that it has access to all of your material, maybe not just some of it. And you've given it instructions, even about how to coach students. We've actually launched a few of these in our courses as kind of study buddies. And we have not seen tons of misinformation pop up because it was trained very specifically. So that's probably where we want to move. Are we there yet? No, that helps. Yes, in the back.
I was gonna say, that was something I heard in a conference I've been to last week, was talking about having, instead of these huge chat GPT, having us train individual children,
Yes, exactly.
you know, and this was from one of the founders of Living Lab,
Yes.
was talking about this.
Yep. General purpose LLMs are good for general purpose questions, not for more specific ones. Yes.
So, a faculty member and I were playing around with, thinking of Gemini to generate images for our course content. And, we saw that it could generate good images, the labeling was wrong.
Yeah.
Or just not very good. And so I thought, well, that would be a great exercise for a student. Have them go through the process of generating this image, which will be revision, and then realize, hey, I can't label this.
Yes, please do more of all of that, because when our students see, not just because we tell them that some of this is really kind of terrible, it's that slop I was talking about earlier. It hits home for them in such a different way than us just saying, kind of preaching at them, saying, it's sad, right? Yes. Okay. I think we're gonna unpack more of this in an exercise I have for you. So here's what I want you to try. I want you to take, so focus a little bit if we need to, take one learning outcome from one of your courses, figure out what level of Bloom's it's sitting at. Happy to come around and help you with questions about that. And then use Bloom's taxonomy in the ways we started talking about. So what opportunities do you see to emphasize those human skills? Where could you maybe help students build skills using AI? Or that kind of ideal, really kind of future thinking option I was talking about earlier to emphasize AI. And so you're not having students kind of work back and forth, but it's more of a seamless working together, okay? I'm gonna give you about 10, well, let's do a full 10 minutes on this. I'm gonna give you a full 10 minutes to work in your, you can work individually for a few minutes by all means. Talk to your colleagues, and then we're gonna share out a few examples in 10 minutes.
So we were talking about back here with AMP and MATMAT. And we felt we were more, both of us really felt like we were more on the apply and analyze side of things, that we didn't always go all the way up. And so we actually started talking about if we had a closed AI system, how could we
move to the evaluating. And that was just most of our discussion. How do we elevate what we're doing? How do we integrate what we're doing with AI? And really the idea of the small ones that educate themselves is really a lot of what we're talking about.
Excellent. I want to just comment on this really quickly. I hear from a lot of faculty a similar kind of vein of thinking of, okay, well, students are gonna go to AI. Let's assume a world in which we can continue to use generative AI. Maybe some of those lower level orders of thinking aren't as important anymore. Can we bump up the complexity? Can we move up Bloom's taxonomy instead? That is a totally valid option. I think though, that there are cases where our students still need to know and remember some facts.
They need to have a whole group.
Yes, please.
Yes.
Okay, where are the freshman group? When I have a nurse, I sure hope they know basic level biology. I don't want them to be reliant on an AI system that's been integrated in their healthcare system. My goodness, right? So this is where that discipline specific thinking is important. So I say this because moving up is a valid approach. Staying where you're at and kind of reconfiguring and reimagining is totally valid too. Okay.
So, this is the STEM area, and the biologists and geologists. We were talking about how the scientific method really plays a big part in our world. It's something we all kind of teach. And that kind of falls into the analyze and apply. The great thing about the scientific method is, for any question, there is a correct answer, but you can't reach it without failing to reach it, right? So there's like multiple possibilities, and one of them is correct, but you have to eliminate what's not correct. And I imagine that's hard for AI to do unless you're coached really well through the process.
We're going to talk more about in a little bit about how important the struggle of learning is. This is something that I'm worried about, right? Because if we think about that cognitive offloading issue, using AI is sometimes the easy way out. And sometimes our students, for whatever reason, again, not assigning judgment, they want to or need to take the easy way out. But that challenge of learning and critical thinking skills are all really important for the work we're trying to set them up to do in the workplace now. We have one more example. That's frightening downstairs. 800 examples.
Give a step.
It's okay. I promise to choose it. No, it's okay. So I am teaching grade planning biology this term, and I kind of against AI because I feel like in my program I'm trying to be very hands-on because that's something that students have said. We don't want students lecture on how to make wine, how to grow grapevines. So I'm very hands-on. So AI doesn't really fit. So I'm trying to incorporate it, which it does push for me like that. So right now we're looking at photography. Probably listen about on the word, but that is identifying the beliefs. And how would you use AI to identify? And I being able to classifications and all of that, but then I look at the concerns on accuracy. And so some of the things that could happen is the lighting could be wrong. So the color green might not come with the color green from this plant and it was from this plant. And then early disease confusion. So if you're drowning on the leaf, it might suggest that it's this disease when it really it's in the first week of that with the month to identify as it's this color down. So AI would really with that. Absolutely. I think that's a really good case where stakes are pretty high, right? AI got it wrong. Right. So in the class last term, I also teach distillation sciences, and one of my students distills at his job at a winery because they're taking old wines and making it into brandy. He's learning on the job. He's now going to take distillation science courses that just opened. He was telling us what he was doing in class because everyone is like wanting to be very interested in learning, and they're all from distillation science. He ended up saying there's fractions that you do coming off of still. It's head, hearts, and toes.
has this ethanol, which you end up throwing down the drain, you don't see it. And he was reincorporating it in his next skills, and the first 1 to 3% instantly go away. It's just a good practice in skilling. So that way you know that you're being safe with what you're doing. And he learned in class about viticulture too, not to do that. And I said, who taught you that? It's my book that I just got from Moonshine University. How do you teach it? Because you're hurting somebody and potentially someone could die from it because it is high level of ethanol. And he said, no, my AI girlfriend named her in his phone. And I kind of bring everybody, because I'm like, I'm sorry, I literally left and my dog was like, copy every single page we need today because it's a dangerous practice. So long story short, 10 minutes later, I go back to my office to return the book. I can hear him in the men's restroom on the phone with my boss talking about what they're doing at work, asking him to throw it away. So AI taught him wrong, and it was potentially it's a library. You were the human element.
Okay, so I want to, please, I want to let one more scene before we move on. I've been hearing you chat groups about how maybe AI use isn't always appropriate for your students, it's gonna give them wrong answers. There's lots of concerns about this, the stakes are pretty high, totally valid. The flip side of that is, are your students going to encounter AI at work in some way? It's increasingly being fed into operations, right? So even if you are teaching in a program where students are going to go out and literally be a service for the VA welder and come to do a job, yes, but the scheduling system is not really happening. There might be AI diagnosis as part of that loop, right? So think not just about the curricular pieces, but about sort of the holistic picture of what students may encounter out in the workplace. You gotta deal a little bit with both. Right, so sometimes those kind of quick introductions to like, hey, go try anything in AI. Let's come back and have a laugh about how terrible the answers were. That can be a really useful exercise to at least get students playing with it a little bit under your expert supervision. And then seeing what comes of it and learning from that. Okay. Okay. We are going to talk a little bit more. Now we're going to kind of broaden. We're not going to necessarily think about the curricular pieces for just a second. So this is just the hexagon framework again. I checked off that first one because we've talked a little bit about that. I'm going to give you some quick ideas for other things you might want to think about for AI resiliency, because there's so much more that we can do than just working on learning outcomes. Okay, so we're going to go fast. Hang tight. We're going to check that one off. We did evaluate and revise learning outcomes. One of the things that I've been encouraging our faculty at OSU to spend some time on is to create or refine their AI related course policies. Who already have a syllabus statement about AI? Okay, good. Does it need to be revisited for the next offering? Probably. Yes, that's the thing, right? So even once you have it, you gotta keep coming back to it. Okay. What you might want to think about is, what does it look like at the course level? What does it look like at the program level? What are you communicating more broadly to your students through those policies? Now, AI policies are not the only piece that's implicated here. One of the things that research on adult learning shows is how important reasonable flexibility is, right? This is often something we talk about in terms of due dates and flexibility, but it can be other kinds of flexibility that you might offer. Basically, the idea here is that we're trying to avoid those off ramps, right? One of the really big off ramps that comes up for students is I ran out of time. It could be a time management issue. It could be that they're experiencing a serious health issue. It can be all kinds of things, right? But if there's reasonable flexibility built in, we're not cornering our students into having to use AI tools to try to get by. Another thing we're seeing some faculty experiment with is modeling transparency in their own AI use. Does anybody have a syllabus statement about that? Oh, so this might be something you all want to talk about. How do you or do you not use AI? And be really specific with your students, right? This could be in how you do or do not generate course materials using generative AI. It could be how you do or do not use generative AI to help evaluate their work and give them feedback. When you start modeling, you start setting that expectations really early, right? And you're encouraging students to basically do the same and follow along with the policies you've set. Okay, next one, guide student development of AI literacy and use. Think about, and this would be a fun question to maybe dig into in your program. Are there discipline-specific resources about effective and ethical AI use that you could share? Right? Gather these, don't just kind of go at it alone in your own course, but could you share it out with all of your students or have a repository of these that they could access? Requiring an AI disclosure statement, it can be really helpful, not just for making sure that students are following your policies, but also guiding their use of AI. If you haven't heard of these before, it's basically an appendix that you would ask them to add, usually to a high stakes assignment, like a paper or something like that. Basically, you ask them a couple of questions. Did you use a generative AI tool? If so, how? Really importantly is the last question that goes something like, how did you ensure that the work you're submitting is substantively your own? That is a process question, right? That's not just what happened, but how did you thoughtfully integrate your work with whatever you did with this tool, okay? Another option here is to offer open discussions about AI, not graded necessarily. Just invite your students to pose questions, talk amongst themselves, get your input. I mentioned earlier that we're hearing from students that they're really hungry just for more information from their faculty because they don't know really what to expect. They're worried about it, right? You are the ones that can guide and lead that conversation. Okay, another option, motivate students. I think this is my favorite one of the bunch actually, because there's a lot of really good research in this area and some really good emerging research relative to AI. If you've never heard of this body of research, because you're really specific here for a minute, great body of research called self-determination theory. It's premised on the notion of how adults are motivated and how they learn. So great for our learners, right? We're not talking about elementary school kids here. It's all about adults. This body of research basically distinguishes two types of motivation. Extrinsic motivation, right? External factors that motivate someone. This usually means grades, right? GPAs. What we're trying to up, and this is really, really important now in the age of generative AI, is intrinsic motivation. What motivates that student to sit down and do the work, okay? I'll leave it there, but we can talk about it more later. I planted this seed earlier to talk about the challenges and rewards of learning. The work we have our students do is harder for some than others, and we need them to lean into those challenges and realize that we struggle too. Talk about struggles with your students that you've had, that you continue to have as you do work in your discipline, right? They need to hear this because they think it's easy for all of us when it wasn't, right? And then the last one here, there's some emerging research here. We're trying some things out at OSU. We're trying to design in more peer-to-peer accountability. We have heard loud and clear from students that they are bad when their peers misuse AI. This comes up most often in online discussions, right? So just for the sake of an example, we'll sometimes run a 50-person online class. Let's say student number 27 decides, no one's gonna notice when I use generative AI to create my initial post, and they plop it in. Oh, their peers are mad. They know it's cheapening their learning. Everybody's learning, right? So the more we can lean into why are we having students do things together and have some peer-to-peer accountability, that could create some AI resiliency. This one probably won't come as any surprise. Assessments maybe need to be revised, rubrics may need to be advised. This is kind of the stuff we started talking about with Blooms, and if you're leaning into that human side of the task. Since you all have that course level AI policy, you haven't done this already, something you might think about is threading it down into assignment level prompts. This is a reminder for students about what your course policy is, as much as making it local to that task right as they're about to do the task, right? especially if you're opening the door to some AI use, either mandatory or optional. It's really important to guide students and tell them exactly what you mean when you say AI can be used sometimes, okay? I'm sure you guys have talked about authentic assessment, right? The more we do of that, the more students are going to not misuse AI. And then emphasizing process over product is kind of a biggie too. So if we have courses where there's only high stakes kind of milestones where you either got it or you didn't, you did it or you didn't, right? That's where we're going to create some unintentional off ramps. If you're creating smaller kind of scaffolded milestones by which you're tracking learning, you're making sure that students are actually doing something instead of waiting until the last minute. All of that can help make sure that the 11th hour, they're not misusing AI. And then this, I mentioned earlier, is kind of our nod to continuous improvement. We're going to be trying all kinds of things related to AI. It's worth remembering that we are all new to this in teaching and learning. We don't know exactly how to do it right, where it might help learning, where it might harm learning. We are going to find out a whole lot about those things in the next few years, the next decade or so, right? But you might try some things and nope, that didn't work. They might still be misusing AI or it had some other unintended implication, right? Track those patterns, try something else, okay? So just to kind of back up, the reason I wanted to bring you the whole framework is so that you can see beyond just sort of curricular revision or how you integrate AI or don't. There's a whole bunch of other things. I think of this as sort of like a buffet for you that you might try to make your course more AI resilient. You can pick and choose among these things, figure out which ones kind of speak to you or which ones you think are the most important to try first, and then maybe come back and find some complementary ones to go with it. All right. Yes.
So this is for us, and we're not West Houston. On a
Okay.
scale of good or bad or ugly, what do we think our students' computer literacy is? I'm gonna say ugly. It's not good. When I have something like one of these that I'm doing, the first thing I have to do is teach them how to use them. Yep. Even the Google search requires skill. So.
They have a hard time navigating campus.
Yeah. So how do we solve that?
That's a bigger question, right? But here's what I would say, this is not necessarily a fun answer, but this is leaning back into those best practices in teaching and learning. These will support your students relative to making sure they're not misusing AI. These things will support them more broadly, but is it comprehensive? No. These are just the AI related ones, right? There's all kinds of other things you guys might be doing, but I'd encourage you to think about AI in each of those. So for example, and to be fair, maybe we don't see the same literacy issues that you're mentioning, but we serve a lot of transfer students. We are a degree completion friendly university on the West Coast. So, and we actually track how many credits students bring into OSU when they try to complete a degree. And I think the most illuminating one is we track their number of terms that they've stopped out, meaning how many terms from the last time they were enrolled somewhere else to the time they come to us. It can be a lot. We're almost starting over with third-year students sometimes. So there's a lot of things we can do. We're trying to weave in AI literacy with some of our kind of technological fluency information that is starting to come to students as soon as orientation. Because we don't want it to just be something that faculty have to kind of shoulder. We want to introduce it everywhere and as early as we can. So this might also mean partnering with folks in student affairs and in advising and taking kind of a coordinated effort to, in all of the ways that we try to onboard students well, where can we strategically weave AI in? Yes.
So I have a lot of data relationship with AI. And so I struggle with it, but then I use it, and I struggle with it, and I use it, and so for me, I also have figured out that a lot of my students don't like it, even though I'm trying to help them. So like, I'm child development, early child development. So in one of the classes, they create lesson plans for an age that they work with. They create them, no AI. then they have to put that back into, or put it into AI and have it, you know, for a different age group, and have AI to it, then they have to evaluate it for developmentally practices. And, you know, like, because like, I'm just maybe you could, and so it's the extra work that they don't like, which. Like, either, but I want them to learn how to use it properly, right? And then my thing is also this, I have some students that I can't even get them to write a little document, they would literally, they're writing things out in hand, taking a photo of it and uploading it. So I know they're not using AI, because who is writing out all of that, making comments, do you know what I mean? I'm just like, could you please type this, like, seriously? And so, again, that's what I love, hey, is I want them to be able to use it responsibly, because when I look at it, I'm like, oh, you could be a lesson for 4-year-old and for 2-year-olds that you can share with your peers, but they're just like. But then I also let them know that AI hallucinates. Like, what do you mean? I'm like, it's gonna lie to you. That's the only thing I know how to tell you. And I'll give you examples about me using it online, and it'll be something completely off kilter. And they're like, what? And I'm like, so you have to be reading it and double checking it. And again, too much work.
Okay. That struggle isn't gonna go away, right? This is why a lot of folks are really worried about AI, because our students' ability to pay attention and for a sustained amount of time, sit down and read something, sit down and write something was already lessening pre-AI. This is where there's not probably a single way to go at that, right? It's gonna be a combination of things. So this is why I mentioned, I think the thing I'm most excited about is the emerging work in motivating students, because we've really got to get to the heart of why does this matter with them, right? That's partially kind of a disclosure on our part, because we can see the light for them, so to speak, right? But how to actually kind of differentiate with some of the things our students might be eager to do, to give them just enough wiggle room within the space of, let's say, an assignment like creating lesson plans, so that they can do something meaningful to them and they want to do it, and maybe you'll get less complaints. Right? So keep at it. It's gonna probably take a couple days. Okay, we have 5 minutes left, and we're not gonna get to the full activity that I was gonna have you do around this, but let's just, it really wants to install updates today. It's okay. All right. I want you to spend, let's say, remaining 4 minutes, because I have a little bit of wrap up I want to do, talking about these questions in your group, okay? I'm gonna go back to that slide, by the way, because it has all the examples, but among these other things I just mentioned, what else might you want to implement? Your course or your program, okay? Kind of think of one of those buckets, one of the other 5 moves that we had talked about previously, and then one of the specific strategies, okay? 4 minutes and then we'll wrap up. Content. Up on the screen are the things that we didn't have time to do formally. But I'd encourage you to take stock of these questions before the end of the day today, right? What next steps can you take? Hopefully you came up with at least one practical idea today. I think the most important one is that second one. What questions do you need to keep talking about? Hopefully you've raised some questions with your colleagues today that you can take beyond today. I'm going to hang around for the remainder of the morning, and I will be here for lunch. So I would welcome the opportunity to talk more with individuals or groups about what you were discussing, since we didn't have tons of time for the debrief. Okay. Advance quickly. I have business cards up front. You're welcome to email me, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to follow up. I've got a sample disclosure statement we could talk about, but we didn't have time. And I will share the slide deck with Todd so that he can give you these resources. This will include a link that doesn't work yet to that full, the hexagon framework. Okay, so you'll be able to get to it hopefully in about a week and look at it and follow. Thank you so much for all of your work today. Thank you for the warm welcome. I really appreciated the time.
Fantastic, thank you. We have a 10-minute break, so we're gonna start back with innovation showcase at 10:40. We're gonna get started. Pretty quick, pretty tight schedule for the morning. Our first innovation showcase will be Amanda Boyle. She's with the ADN Nursing. Enid is currently working on her PhD in increasing AI literacy and pedagogy, and I'm going to let her introduce her innovation showcase.
Just one correction, DMP, Doctorate of Nursing, not PhD, but just as important, I hope.
Oh, absolutely.
So my name is Amanda Boyle. I am an ADN nursing instructor. I teach Nursing 1 fundamentals. And if you talk to any of my cohorts, they're going to tell you that AI is my life right now. I love AI. I have also never been more violently geared towards wanting to throw a computer out the window than when I work with the AI, because it does hallucinate sometimes. But I hope to show you really, my focus is healthcare. In healthcare education. I'm a family nurse practitioner, so I work in the healthcare field and I teach. And so I'm going to try very hard to show the importance of AI literacy in healthcare education. It's very daunting following you too, because I think I'm using most of your research in my DMP. So in full transparency, I use 6 AI programs to create this presentation, including the presentation platform itself. It's Prezi. I created videos with Polo AI, all of the images with ChatGPT. I have used Google Scholar to pull my research, but I want you to know that everything was very heavily and deeply vetted. And research was excruciatingly gone through to make sure that there are no hallucinations in my presentation. So first I want to start with Florence Nightingale. She's our mother of nursing, but I do believe that she is the mother of data information. She used the Coxcomb diagram to prove in the Crimean War that it was unsanitary conditions, not battlefield injuries, that were killing soldiers. And I believe that as a mother of nursing, she would look at the healthcare industry and say, we have AI that can look at big, large data sets and interpret it quickly and see patterns that humans can't see. And if data can save lives, we need to use it. AI is already in our nursing education. We use it, students use it, and I'll talk more about the disparity in the use later. But we have to be able to use structured AI use, not free AI use, which is what we see a lot of students doing, being illiterate in AI and using it freely. But if we use structured AI use, we'll have personalized learning, we'll foster critical thinking, clinical judgment, clinical reasoning, in a productive way that doesn't diminish their knowledge, but actually increases it. And I have a million research articles at the end that I'm willing to share with you if you need them. So you've already heard many of the arguments against AI. Many of you have them. One, that it reduces critical thinking. And while, again, we use free AI use or unstructured AI use can produce a decrease in critical thinking because of cognitive offloading, what we are seeing in research, especially in healthcare education, that structured AI use is actually increasing their critical thinking, their critical judgment, their clinical judgment, and their clinical reasoning. And let's be quite honest, cheating has existed long before AI, academic dishonesty long before AI. I watched a Saved by the Bell episode in high school where he wrote the answers on his shoes, right? So just because we have AI, it doesn't mean it's going to increase cheating. Cheating comes from a culture. And when we have AI literacy and we promote transparency, we change that culture and we can decrease the actual cheating and academic dishonesty that can come from AI use. Also, yes, it hallucinates horribly. Sometimes I have said, you know what, just stop. And I've had to walk out of my office because it hallucinates. But that's why, again, AI literacy is important. Students need to know what hallucination looks like and how to vet it, how to pull the information so that you can make sure that it's correct. And again, it doesn't replace faculty. Here's the thing, AI cannot replace mentorship. It cannot replace human interaction and emotion and relationships. It's just not going to take our jobs away. It's going to make us better, hopefully, if we utilize it correctly. And then over-reliance on lazy learners. Listen, even without AI, I have students that wait last minute to start studying for an exam at 7 o'clock the next day, right? And so through structured AI, we can develop programs that actually allow base level scaffolding that increases knowledge, increases their desire to learn. So let's refine the argument. It's not AI. AI is here. It's how we utilize AI that's so important. So this is what it can do. It can take data sets, it can interpret, it can create pictures and images, but what it can't replace is thinking independently, feeling emotions, having clinical judgment. It can't take legal responsibility. And if you're a nurse, you know how important that is, right? We have to have legal responsibility and we have to work within our scope. And it can't guarantee accuracy. When we have an automated blood pressure cuff in the hospital, we utilize it because it makes our jobs easier. It helps us be able to take a blood pressure when the patient has gun smoke blaring on 100 in the room and 50,000 alarms are going off. But we have to understand when a reading is off, we have to understand how to recalibrate that machine and go back to a baseline manual blood pressure. And that's how we have to utilize AI, especially in healthcare education. So the question isn't, is it necessary? The question is, can we afford not to teach AI literacy at this point? And I'm going to tell you, as nurses, we have to teach AI literacy. So the Future of Jobs report, which is a 2025, is a world report. It says that AI is the #1 driver of job change. It is the fastest growing skill. And like you heard earlier, employers expect it. I have seen a job posting that said, if you don't know AI, you can't apply. It is necessary. The Texas Board of Nursing actually has a statement, 15.31, which is their AI statement that says nurses will encounter it, they must understand it, and AI is within their scope of practice. So we are no longer, if we're not teaching AI literacy, we are not producing nursing students that are ready to practice in the field. The American Nursing Association goes even further and says you have to know it, you have to be able to implement it, you have to utilize it ethically, and you have to ensure patient safety with it. So it's no longer a question. Now, ASIN and QSIN do not specifically have AI statements, but what they do say is we have to keep up with modern nursing and informatics, and we have to keep up with modern nursing and curriculum. And in order to meet those standards, we have to teach AI literacy. I'm pretty sure, I'm sorry to say, that we're going to have an AI statement next ASIN visit. So we have to get ready. So as you can see, there's a lot of programs already at use in the healthcare. I can tell you as a nurse practitioner, I work remotely. Every aspect of my patient care, except for the actual words that come out of my mouth, is monitored and developed with AI. I don't even have to chart. I just have to make sure that what was recorded was charted correctly. Every aspect of scheduling, refill, reminders, everything is done with AI. So how can we benefit our students with this? Well, first, we have improved access to resources. I have seen videos online that can show a heart from a picture. They can turn it into a real life heart, show the blood flow through the heart with the electrical conduction, and line it up against an EKG. I cannot do that with a whiteboard and a marker, but my students can access that. They also have databases, and it allows them to go deeper when they don't understand it or pull back when they do understand it. Also, increased engagement in learning. I actually entered ChatGPT. I said, here's 3 diagnoses. I want you to pick one of them. I'm going to come at you like I am an ER nurse doing triage. I'm going to do an assessment, and I want you to tell me your signs and symptoms, but don't tell me your disease. And I went through an assessment like I was teaching, and it told me all the signs and symptoms for COPD. I did try to mess it up. I said, hey, I love you. And it said, I don't know how that relates to chest pain. And have you met my wife? I mean, it's legit, right? It helps us. We have games, we have videos. There's all sorts of techniques and platforms that we can utilize in our nursing education. And then better preparation for real world scenarios. Now, we're already using this, but I can go into my lab course for a clinical judgment model. I can create a scenario of a guy that ate gas station sushi and has gastritis. I can throw in a bunch of extra things to throw them off to bring forward cues. And I can pull out of them those clinical reasoning and those cues that are necessary for education in nursing. So, how does AI look at learning theories, right? So, Dr. Coley's favorite, Benner's novice to expert theory, it's modeling thinking. It's modeling for the novice. It's showing you what master thinkers are thinking. In Tanner's, it's having those cues brought forward over and over. So it's not replacing thinking, it's bringing thinking to visual color. It's showing them how to think, and it's modeling how we think. And then, of course, I can't not mention Bloom's, which I did not know that was yours, and I'm sorry, I will give you credit. Oh. Anyway, it does increase Bloom's taxonomy. We have a student that was failing miserably. She failed one, which is basic knowledge, and she had to repeat. And one of my cohorts took her and said, go into this chat or Grok, I'm sorry, Grok, enter, how do I need NCLEX questions using Bloom's taxonomy that show assessment and application with rationale. She brought her grade up. She was a returner and she was failing as a returner. She brought her grades from 60s to high 80s just with that one tool. So we show that it's working. And then, of course, andragogy. We're all adults. They need flexible, self-directed, patient, practice-focused care. Oops. All right. So the disparities, I heard a question about what are our levels of learning for AI? Well, here's the truth of the matter. We have students that are high-level thinkers, that are high-level learners. They're already AI literate. They're already utilizing AI, right? So when we can let them go and they use it, but then we have these first-generation learners, English as a second language learners, older adult or non-traditional learners that don't understand AI literacy. And so they're already behind. And this gap that we have when we aren't AI literate becomes a chasm. So we have to teach AI literacy so that we can pull these learners to the level that is practice ready as nursing. We no longer can say that AI literacy isn't necessary in education. The future's coming. We're going to have robots. I'm sorry, I'm going to buy an Elon Musk robot to do my laundry. That's all there is to it. I can wash my dishes. I'm already saving. Right? I'm working all these extra jobs. But we have discharge planning robots that are coming, medication reconciliation robots that are coming. I get my drinks at certain Chinese food restaurants from a robot that smiles at me and tells me to have a nice day. Robots are here to stay. We have to know how to use them. We already have a home health care system that monitors patients in their homes. It will alert the nurse when there's trends, and it has reduced rehospital admission by 30% in these patients. So we have to get ready. Now, in education, they're already using it. If you don't know what they're using, ask them because they're excited about it or they're scared of it, but they're using it no matter what. But my favorite is Notebook LM. And that's another question I heard. I can take my notes that are vetted, that I know are real and I know are good. I can drop them into LM. I can create videos and podcasts that help students learn on different levels or listen to podcasts when they're commuting or cleaning or sitting at basketball games like I did in nursing school. Listen to these vetted podcasts that I know is good. I can copy that link and I can drop it into my Canvas shell. And then my students have a structured, real vetted AI tool that they can use to become better and deeper level learners. Again, Florence Nightingale, the OG, she said nursing's a progressive art such that if you stand still, you're going backwards. We're in the past. We've got to move forward. We can no longer stand still. AI literacy isn't an option. And if you ever want a empathy course on what a nursing student feels like and check off, present on AI to a level of professors, I appreciate you. And if you need any references or you want to see my research for my DMP, I'm an email away. Thank you. Do you have any questions? No questions? Okay.
You did a great job.
Um, what was that? Let me make a note to do that. We're gonna post a Zoom version of today in Canvas, so adjuncts can see it as well. And I'll put the links now so everybody can. So unfortunately, Dana Ford, our math Dana Ford, was feeling badly this morning, but she has sent in a video for her innovation, so I'm gonna play that. My music. Regan.
Especially in the very real day-to-day work educators do. They
Start at the beginning. Turn down the volume.
Thank you for being here today. My presentation is called How AI Can Enhance Education.
Wow.
Today I want to talk about practical ways AI can support teaching and learning, especially in the very real day-to-day work educators do. This is not really about replacing teachers or chasing trends. It is about using AI as a tool to save time, improve instructional materials, and create more meaningful learning experiences for students.
I want to begin with a question that may sound very familiar to many of us. How many of you have spent a weekend redesigning a worksheet from scratch for multiple sections? For many teachers, that is just normal. We spend hours pulling materials together, making adjustments for different class needs, and trying to make the same content work across several sections. The challenge is not usually a lack of ideas, it is a lack of time. That is where AI can help. AI can serve as a teaching partner that helps us work more efficiently while still keeping us in control of the instruction.
This slide highlights the difference between the old way and the AI-assisted way. Traditionally, creating materials often means pulling from multiple sources, rewriting directions, adjusting reading levels manually, formatting everything ourselves, and hoping the final product lands the right way for students. That process can take hours. With AI, we can create scaffolded problems with worked examples much faster. We can build differentiated versions of the same math for different student groups. We can generate exit tickets focused on one objective, add vocabulary and formula reference boxes, and even create answer keys in the same work session. The important thing is that AI does not remove the teacher. It removes some of the repetitive labor so we can focus more on instruction.
One of the biggest lessons I have learned is that the prompt makes the difference. The better the prompt, the better the output. If I am specific about the course, the topic, the number of examples, the difficulty progression, and the type of application problems I want, AI can generate something much more useful. For example, instead of saying, make me a worksheet, I can ask for a scaffolded worksheet on solving exponential equations for a prerequisite college algebra course, with worked examples, practice problems, and real-world applications. That level of detail helps generate not just a student worksheet, but also an answer key and teacher notes. So really, learning to use AI well is partly about learning how to ask clearly and intentionally.
Before moving into project design, I want to pause and highlight something else that stood out to me. As I listened to students in class, I learned that many of them are already using AI in practical ways to support their studies. They are not always using it to avoid learning. In many cases, they are using it to help themselves learn more effectively. For example, some students are using AI to create flashcards for terminology and key concepts. That can be especially helpful when they are trying to review vocabulary, formulas, or definitions in a way that feels more interactive. Some are even using it to generate simple diagrams or visual supports that help them better understand what they are studying. Others are using AI to create additional practice problems. This is a big one, because students often want more repetition than a textbook or class handout provides. They may ask AI to generate extra review questions before an exam, or to give them more examples on a topic they are still struggling with. That kind of immediate access to practice can be very appealing to students who want help in the moment. I also learned that some students are using AI in connection with their textbook. They may ask it to explain a section in simpler language, create review material from a chapter, or generate practice that matches what they are seeing in the book. In other words, they are using AI as a study support tool alongside their course materials. I think this matters because it reminds us that AI is already part of many students' academic lives. So as educators, we have an opportunity to guide students toward productive and responsible uses of it. And that leads naturally into the next idea. If students are already using AI to study, then we can also think about how we, as instructors, can use AI to design stronger, more meaningful learning experiences for them.
One area where AI is especially helpful is designing real-world projects. We know students are often more engaged when math feels relevant to their lives or future careers. AI can help us quickly redesign the same mathematical concept into different career-connected settings. For example, polynomial and rational functions might be framed through a welding shop scenario. Exponential and logarithmic functions might be framed through nursing dosage or culinary scaling. The math itself does not change. What changes is the context. And when the context feels meaningful, students are more likely to connect with the work. That is a powerful shift, especially for students who may not already see themselves as successful math learners.
On this slide, I want to show what AI can actually produce for us as educators. Sometimes when people hear AI, they think of something vague or experimental, but in practice, it can help create very concrete instructional products. In this presentation, we have already talked about scaffolded problems with worked examples, differentiated materials using the same math in different contexts, exit tickets tied to a single objective, vocabulary and formula reference boxes, and answer keys generated in the same session. Those are the kinds of products that can save teachers a significant amount of time while also improving clarity for students. What makes these example products especially valuable is that they are not isolated pieces. AI can help build a complete instructional set. Instead of just making one worksheet, it can help create the student handout, a teacher key, guided examples, a reference sheet, and even a project overview that all align with the same learning goal. That creates more consistency across sections and helps students receive materials that feel connected rather than pieced together. This also matters because our students often need multiple entry points into the same concept. One student may benefit from step-by-step worked examples. Another may need the vocabulary highlighted, and another may understand best through a real-world application. AI gives us a faster way to build those supports without having to start from scratch every single time. So when I say example products, I am really talking about usable teaching tools that support learning, save preparation time, and make instruction more responsive to student needs.
Another important point is that good projects do more than teach content. They can also build community. When students work together on meaningful problems, they stop being the students who feel like they did not make the cut, and they start becoming the students who solved the problem. Projects can be designed so that every student has a visible role.
They can include peer teaching so students explain ideas to one another. They can connect to careers so the math feels purposeful, and they can be created for a real audience beyond the gradebook. Those elements help students feel seen, capable, and connected. AI can help us build those experiences more efficiently, but the goal is still human, stronger learning, and stronger belonging.
This slide shows what community engagement can look like in practice. First, interdependent group work ensures that every student has a role and every contribution matters. Second, peer teaching presentations allow students to explain their findings, which builds both understanding and confidence. Third, real-world career context helps students see why the math matters. Then, when students share their work through poster sessions, videos, or slides, they are doing more than finishing an assignment. They are communicating learning. That creates a stronger sense of belonging. Students who may have once doubted themselves begin to see themselves as contributors and problem solvers. And importantly, AI helps make this doable. If you teach multiple sections or formats, AI can help generate the materials so you can focus on facilitating the learning.
This is probably the most important slide in the presentation. AI is not the point. Our students are the point. AI is only valuable if it helps us better learn students. So if you are not using AI yet, my encouragement is simple. Try one small thing this week. Describe a worksheet you need, include the subject, the students, and the level, and see what comes back. You do not have to redesign your whole course overnight. If you are already using AI, then maybe the next step is to push further. Use it not just to make tasks faster, but to design richer learning experiences that connect to students, lines, and help create classrooms where every student belongs.
This slide provides a quick reference for prompt ideas. One prompt can help generate a scaffolded worksheet. Another can help design a real-world group project. Another can help differentiate instructions by reading level. And another can help adapt materials for a hybrid course format. What I hope this shows is that AI is flexible. It can support planning, differentiation, project design, and course delivery. You do not need to know everything to begin. A few strong prompt patterns can go a long way.
If you are wondering where to start, here are a few possible AI tools teachers might explore. ChatGPT, Claude AI, and TeachShare. Some tools have free versions, while others may charge for expanded services. The key is not choosing the perfect tool right away. The key is to choose one tool, experiment with it, and learn which kinds of prompts yield useful results. Over time, you can decide which platform best fits your teaching needs, comfort level, and budget.
To close, I just want to say this. AI can help us save time, improve materials, and create more engaging learning experiences. But its value depends on how we use it. When used thoughtfully, it can support the work we already care deeply about as educators. Thank you for your time and attention today. I appreciate the opportunity to share this with you, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Excellent. I might not be able to answer the questions. I know that a lot of you are using AI to create material. Are there any standout platforms anybody wants to share that they really like? Vivian?
I use several, just because we are using it and then are using the free version of it. The information in that, once you run it, you know, like, oh, you've got a conversation that doesn't work, they still let you converse with it, but it gives you, the Shein version, you know, it's not as good. Or teaching version. And so when that happens, you have to like jump from one to one to one, you know, so I mean, I use Magic School AI, obviously educators. For little, I've used Claude before and I used Chat, Gemini, I don't like it, I mean, it was F in my opinion. So I jump between those three, I just wish that we had one that I didn't keep jumping around. So it's kind of fair.
So you're saying the paid versions are worthwhile?
Probably would be, yes.
I'm finding it true. And I know I've used Magic School and they have the ability to create those customized chatbots that Dr. McAlledge was talking about.
Right.
We haven't made one in a couple of years. Reed and I were trying to build one, and because you want to make it pedagogical, you don't want it to give the answer. But what we found is you can wear it down and finally give you the answer. But that was 2 years ago. Maybe it's better now, but we were trying to use, you can start making the customizable AI with Magic School. Any other examples that we need to know about?
I mean, I like ChatGPT, but I pay for it.
Yeah.
I'm using to pay for it.
Yeah.
It's great when you don't pay for it, but like she said, if it's just be a certain time of day, like things like in the afternoon is super laggy, even if you did pay for it.
Yeah.
But it does a ton of different things, and even when it like gives you the wrong, if you're like, oh, I don't, like, I was doing something for like a Texas government class, and it gave me like not the shape of Texas. I don't know what the shape it was, I know Texas and Oklahoma by shape.
Yeah.
I don't know what shape it was. I was like, you know, can you please make this the shape of Texas?
Yeah.
And it's
For real Texas.
it didn't like it, but it eventually did it, you know, and stuff like that. So there's just stuff like that where, like, you know, she wanted to have like I wanted to show district voting maps and stuff and that type of thing. And so it can do it, but it's like you really like you have to vet it. You like you have to just make sure it's.
It wants to give you the shape of Texas you want. What shape of Texas do you want?
My states, my shapes.
Yeah.
So I didn't know what it was, but I was like, that's definitely not Texas.
Yeah. Well, we are ready for our first perspective. I think AT is here. AT from the IT department is going to give us a perspective. AT knows a lot about AI, and he was recommended by several people who said you should have AT talk about his perspective on AI.
Oh, I didn't put slideshows in the email.
Yep. Thank you. Right here. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. All right, let's do this. All right, so that video presentation, I must say, had the most diverse group of AI voices in there. So, and voices from all over the world. So this might be a hard act to follow. I wanted to share some of my perspective, not just from an IT perspective of things that I do with AI. I have a lot of hats I wear, and I want to just get y'all's opinion. Some of y'all that may know me, what are some things that you think I've used AI for? Just throw it out, yell it out. That's one thing, but there's more. What is it? Council meetings.
Political campaign.
Yeah, I won a whole council election. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, it helped me win a city council position. What's some other things y'all think? Music, awesome. Y'all know me, don't you? Okay, awesome. I had ChatGPT break down the top 10 things that I've used AI for. So one of the things I help a few of my friends. I'm not a lawyer. I think I go to jail for that, but I was able to generate some documents to help people expunge their records and do a notice of non-disclosure for items that were on their record for a long time that may have prevented them from moving on forward in their careers. One of the individuals I assisted was actually preparing to go to nursing school, and she needed to clear some of the things on her record so she can be able to, get to the next point in her career. So she was able to do that. I have a daughter who's going to college pretty soon, and so I've been using ChatGPT to help not automate, but basically assist in the process of scholarships. She's got accepted to Baylor, and Baylor ain't cheap. So we're trying to find every way to make that happen for her. I actually sued Albertsons too. It's a federal suit. Super random. Um, I yeah, just Google Thomas v. Albertsons. It's in there. It is important that we maintain our creative, intellectual concepts.
we don't want to rely on ChatGPT and other AI tools to completely use our artistic expressions or just use them for everything. You know, I think it's fine to be able to mold and make ours a little better, enhance what we already put in there. The IT perspective, that stuff's boring. I don't really want to go into all of that, but there's some things that I do every day with IT. I ask it, hey, create a script to automate installing a piece of software that can be blasted off to all y'all's computers. You know, sometimes you may see things that just show up on your computer like, hey, how'd this get here? I get messages from y'all saying, is this legit? I'm like, yes, that's legit. That's me. Sometimes I do things a little erroneously, and I really make my superiors a little frustrated because I'm more of a doer instead of a planner. And so they like to, you know, have communication council and about, you know, 20 meetings just to do something I can do in 10 seconds. Y'all know nothing about that. For me, AI is not just artificial intelligence. It's my artistic expression. Yes, I spelled expression with the I because that's my artistic ability to do so. I think as educators, it's important for us to understand that uh, we've delivered messages probably the same way for a long time, right? How can we deliver the message in a way that is received a little better on the other end? I'm big on infotainment. I like to be able to deliver messages in a way that is palatable for people that just doesn't tune it out because it's in text format or it may not be fun for certain people. Everybody doesn't like the quadratic formula, right? But if you put it in a song, they might learn it, right? Yeah, I think that there's so many ways that we can just use AI to expand how we deliver the messages to our students in whatever field we're doing. One of the things I've done, this is our Grayson College logo. I felt like for my Zoom background, I wanted something to incorporate Grayson College's logo, but I wanted to look a little jazzy. I wanted to, you know, make it look like I don't know, I had a nice looking office. So I had ChatGPT do this. And so if you're ever on Zoom with me, that's what you're going to see in the background. I said, yeah, illuminate this and create a logo for that is illuminated on the wall in a nice office. And I think it looks really cool. So these are some. Don't let Dr. Harris see this. I might get one made though. So, Dr. Cook, I'm picking on you right now because you gave me this earlier in the week, right? All right. All right. Well, tell me what this is that's on the screen right now. Okay. So this is something that you're having issues with, and students weren't able to see the link that you provided, right? Okay. So for me, I'm like, when I look at this, as our first impression as educators, as an instructor for a course, and this is just my personality, everybody didn't have to do this, but in my mind, it's like, all right, how can I deliver this in a way that is more engaging for the students? So I told ChatGPT to make it look like a Prince album cover. It's entertaining, right? Infotainment. It still delivers the message, but now people actually want to look at the credits. I know growing up, I used to have CDs and I used to look through all the album credits, you know, for hours and everything. Yes, ma'am. You seem to have forgotten. I work for the city of Denison. I got the police chief's number right here. I had a buddy of mine reach out to me a few days ago. He is a photographer and he hadn't been big on AI. He's like, hey man, what are some AI tools that I can use in order to help get this glare out of his clients' glasses? And I just took the picture and I said, hey, ChatGPT, take the glare out the glasses. It's that simple, right? And this is another aspect of how I've used AI. Going back to the infotainment, I think earliest ways that we remember things in education is through song, the ABC song, right? The skeleton, I'm my A&P people, right? The foot bone's connected to it's one of them bones, right? This is way we've learned from the earliest of our education career is through song. The days of the week, my kids, I don't think I learned it through the Addams Family song, but they do the Addams Family now. There's Sunday and there's Monday, there's Tuesday, it's this whole song, right? And this is how we remember. Schoolhouse Rock, I love Schoolhouse Rock, even though it aired originally before my time, but my mom, she always allowed us to listen to it. So, my multiplication table, we mentioned students needing to know that, right? I remember 3, it's a magic number. Yeah, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 27. Thank y'all. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Um, so my daughter, I told y'all about her in this journey of being accepted to Baylor. And I have a whole spreadsheet that tracks all the scholarships we've applied for. And I ran across this one, Texoma Chevy. They are giving away a scholarship and they wanted a video creation. And they listed the criteria that you have to put in the video. Put your GPA, let us know what school you're going to, all these different things for your video. So what do y'all think I did, right? All right. So there's this AI tool I use. It's called Suno, and Suno is a music creation tool. And as a musician, I played a few chords in on my keyboard and like, hey, I want a song to be structured like this. Of course, I originally wrote all the songs. First I had ChatGPT, hey, write this song for Kennedy. I was like, song suck. Let me do my own, right? But I still wanted some assistance because, the elements of it, I didn't want to go play guitar and get the drums and everything in there, right? So I had like some rough vocals I initially sang into this platform called Suno. And it was lyrics that was for my daughter to be able to sing. And so I'll just play a little bit of it for you real quick. And so, of course, this music was something that Suno assisted with. All right, so I'm gonna pause it real quick. I'm gonna get to the final product and my daughter and I, we actually created a video, we created a song, and this is assisted through Suno. So I'll start from the top. Here we go. Of course, I put some old video footage in our video for it. And I found the big that he is virgin and stuff. This is my senior year, 4 years later this year, and I have had some fun. All good things must come to an end, but this is where my new chapter begins. Ain't nobody stopping, all my haters watching. I'm so glad I'm going to college. After graduation, a whole new world is waiting, anticipating for me at college. I'm going to college. So yeah, we snuck on that field and got some of that footage. The gate was open, so. But I know, right? and our students, right? They're coming in here with this mentality like, hey, I'm going to college. This is an awesome experience. This is great. Now, you want to find ways to keep them engaged and keep them excited about what we have going on. This is another clip from, I took a screenshot of the video and said, I want her to be I'm manifesting. I'm a manifester, right? And so I want her to be a cheerleader at Baylor. She wants to be a cheerleader at Baylor. So I said, ChatGPT, make this uniform a Baylor uniform, right? And it converted it for her. And I added that in the video clip somewhere down in the video. So I can share the full video if y'all want to go check it. I wanted an album cover, an album cover for this because I uploaded it all to the streaming platforms, iTunes, everywhere, right? Amazon. And hopefully we get a bunch of streams. Hopefully everybody else can, sing, I'm going to college with their acceptance letters and create, some different type of revenue stream. That way we can help pay for this college. So I had ChatGPT make an album cover with Baylor colors and without the actual branding of it because I ain't trying to get sued. So this was the album cover that was created for the streaming platforms. These are a few things that I've used all my AI tools for as being a creator. And I think as instructors, as educators, we all are artists. We're not just the ones that's in the art department. There's an art to teaching. There's the art to being able to deliver a message that way people can receive it in a way that they'll remember it always. I think the most memorable teachers will do things that are very impactful. I remember years ago I had Chase as an online instructor, right? And I think the delivery methods of creating videos and creating content are things that people always remember. I go back to Schoolhouse Rock, understanding the preamble, we the people, in order to make a more perfect union. So I'm big on convergence. I love being able to work with all of you guys. And so as a person that's a content creator, I always find ways to connect just the art to anything else that we can do. The other day I had my little joke about the dental, like I said, what do you call x-rays at a dental office? They're called toothpicks. Some of y'all went over. All right, I'm done. Hey, this is my presentation. I'm done, y'all. I mean, tomorrow's the deadline.
You have me laughing and crying, AP. Next up for perspectives is David James from our computer science department. Here. Oh, you got the update. That's right. There.
Where's it gonna be in here?
Oh, no.
No, here it's. Certainly not as fun as AT's up here. So let's see how that is. And this is, for me, it's perspectives of, you think computer science, you should be all over AI and all that. Well, not exactly. Some of it's kind of kicking and screaming, and some of it is like, well, it's here, you got to do something with it. And I do have, even in my grad work, we studied a lot of it and how it works underneath the covers. But then what does that do, right? So these are kind of some things I'm going to look at. What do I say is acceptable uses in my classes and things like that? What are some of my first thoughts and how do I discourage it? How do I encourage things? So we'll look at that. So what are some acceptable uses? And one of the things I try to do at the beginning of my classes is I try to make a good rapport with the students so that they'll tell me what they're doing. You know, I try to find out something about them. What are they interested in? Because I want to bring up things that they're interested in, and I'll find articles, places, and say, hey, have you seen this? Bring videos and things, right? So in asking them, some of them told me, they said, well, they like using Quizlet to take the lectures, put them in there. And then one of them said they did that and it's running through it and it comes up and asks them, what is the copyright on the book or something, right? Because it's down at the bottom of every page. And so it just puts it in there. One of them said they use it to explain lectures or explain my examples. In programming, I do lots of examples. I'll sit up there, and of course, a lot of times I'll tell them, I'll say, okay, tell me what to type. We'll type it. Will it going to work, right? And so I have examples, and not all the students get that when you first do an example. And so what they'll do is some of them will take those examples and they'll give it to ChatGPT or something and say, explain this to me. So they'll use it to explain my textbook, my examples that I create. And I think that's an excellent use of that kind of thing. Explain concepts and things. So those are things that are really, really good. Unacceptable use it. Yeah, I tell them, don't have it write your programs for you, right? You don't want it to take your exams, those types of things. So, but you do want to be able to use it with some things. And one of the things I do to discourage using it in class and stuff, and I want to create it where they actually learn something, right? In understanding how they work, you look and I tell them this, I give them these things. AI can only produce things it's already seen. Companies hire you to do something that hasn't been done. Because if it's been done, they just go hire somebody. They're just going to buy it. They're not going to pay you to do it, right? And AI is not perfect. It makes mistakes. If you don't understand the concepts or the content, you're not going to recognize the errors. You're not going to be able to correct the errors, right? So these human things that they do, right? You have to be able to understand what your subject is, or you won't recognize that it made an error. I actually installed some of these large language models on my laptop. I got a Mac with lots of memory, so I could do that kind of thing. And I brought it to class and I said, write a program, play tic-tac-toe. Let's compile it. It doesn't compile. Okay, can we fix it? So you see, I give examples like that show that, hey, it's not going to do everything for you. And tic-tac-toe is it's more complicated than you would think, but in a programming thing, it's fairly simple, right? So I do things like that. Let them know that. Let's see, go this way. Yes. My first thoughts was, I'm doing beginning programming. They're simple assignments. Everybody's code's going to look the same. Should be very similar. So how are they going to use AI? What is that going to do, right? Why would you use AI on something so simple? Advanced assignments, I figured it's going to be obvious if they cheated. And we'll look at that in a minute. But yeah, is it going to be obvious? Maybe. So when you look at cheating, just what are they doing? Some non-AI examples. Well, students go and they put your thing in, they go to Chegg, some other site, and they find some code and they turn it in. They don't do that with y'all's classes, do they? So they turn that in. The other thing is a student copies another student. Of course, sometimes they upload it with the other student's name still on it. That happens. And then this one was a real good one. So this one about assembly language. So at the beginning of the semester, I showed the students, I can take C code and have the compiler generate assembly code for me. And one of the students says, what if we do that? And I said, it will be obvious. it was a lot more obvious than I thought it was going to be. So the first thing is like, I looked at the code and I went, wait a minute, what is all this other stuff? This doesn't even look right. So let me give you an example in non-programming what it would be. I ask you to write me a paragraph about a boy and his dog in Chinese. And you turn an assignment in Japanese. But it's even better than that. The top line says, translated from, and gives the original source. They turned it in that way. So that was kind of humorous there, right? AI example, student gives the problem to AI. Now, this was one that was just really amazing to me. So we have them use Visual Studio. And so they're in there. And so some student came to me and said, how can I make it stop doing this? Let's see, I think this may be the next slide, maybe. Now that was a different one. But the student says, how do I make it stop doing this? And I go, what are you doing? And they type 2 lines in, and it just spit out the rest of the code. No context, no anything. And I'm thinking, so it plagiarized another student with only a couple of lines of code? And I'll show you an example. The other one is, this is the simple assignment, right? So you'll notice on the left, you see, here's my deal. I don't expect you to read it, but notice on the left, this is one that I would have expected from a student to do. The one on the right is what some students did. I'm expecting a couple of sentences, right? And on the right, I get 2 huge paragraphs of things that are not in the chapter, things we haven't talked about, things that you probably don't get for 2 years later. And you're like, okay, this is obvious, right? That it was not, it should have been simple. So what did I do? Well, it's now like an in-person lockdown browser 10-minute assignment in class. And then I get the simple ones again. So that was one of the things. Write code, yeah, this is the one with writing it, taken from my C code, right? And so it was just really the non-AI example. Here's the example that the program that the student did. So the stuff in yellow, the Copilot did. All they did was type in the first couple of lines. And the rest of it, it just filled in. The other thing I noticed is that almost every student had exactly the same code, down to the spacing, right? A lot of students did that. I think one of the interesting things I had was a non-AI example. So you can see that the AI examples and the non-AI examples have a lot of similarities. So they went out and they grabbed something. And there's a program that was written by, it's a professor in somewhere over in Europe. And so the idea was it takes, when I first saw this, we had a professor that I was a TA, and he would go find several examples on the internet and give them to me. And I would run them in this program against all the students' things. And I had 3 sections of 60 students, so 180 students. And so you'd go running against all the code, against all these little samples, and it would show how close they match. Didn't take me long to figure out, I don't have to go get examples. I just run all the students' code against themselves. And out of 180 students, 20 of them copied the same thing from the internet. I don't have to go find examples because they're going to give me the examples themselves, right? But there was one student that was really smart about it, except that the program that I used took care of that. He translated all the variable names to Spanish. But it still matched at 90-something% because it didn't look at names, it just looked at structure. So, you know, whether they're using AI or they're just copying something, the results is kind of the same. But I try to encourage them to do things. So detecting it, all the assignments look the same. They do methods and things that's like, wait a minute, you're not going to learn that for another 2 semesters. We haven't gone over that. So those are things that I did. Run a compare program. That's the one I did that runs compare against all of the students. Now I have a small enough sample set here. I can just look at them and see which ones are the same exact. I mean, I look and I go, there's no difference in spacing. It's the same exact things, right? You would expect at least a few typing differences. So what am I doing to make it more difficult? Lockdown browser on things. Even that one where it's like, it should take you 5 or 10 minutes to do this thing. And you're going to go put it in AI and give me that big long thing. It's like, why? You know, so it's like, okay, we'll do a lockdown browser in class. It's going to take up 10 minutes, which I'd rather use for lecturing or explaining things, but we'll do that, proctor everything. And this last one is interesting, control the editor. Because remember I said they're using Visual Studio Code. They typed in a couple of lines and it just filled in the rest of the code for them. That's a big problem. So my idea on this is that I'm gonna get a Unix machine of some sort, Linux machine, put an editor on there. It's not gonna have any ChatGPT tied to it or anything like that. Students can always get around things, but you'll probably notice it from the other things. And then they'll just type in, it won't fill in anything for them. So those are the things that I'm gonna look at doing to try to make things better. So here's the thing I do. What happens when a student cheats? So this is what I've been doing. I typically give the student a 0. Maybe they really know the stuff. Maybe they did the work. I don't know. And then I say, come talk to me. Come meet with me. A lot of times they don't even show up. They don't even ask for a meeting, right? They don't complain, don't do anything. And then when they get there, I go, explain this to me. Explain it. Tell me what you did. How does it work? I did that with one student and he kind of looked at me and he goes, I can't explain it. And I just said, well, then you understand your grade, right? And yeah. He said, well, I took a shortcut. They won't admit to cheating. It's just a shortcut, right? So then another student came to me and he comes in and I said, I don't know. He explained it to me. And I said, okay, that's great. And he was really interested. And I said, well, if you're interested in that, let me show you this other thing. And we sat, I don't know, we talked a while afterwards. And you think that's the end of the story, but it wasn't. So my wife and I went on our anniversary dinner, some nice restaurant. And we're sitting there and I'm always talking to people. So I started talking to the people next to us and and the lady goes, you know so-and-so? No. What about this person? It was a picture of their son who was in that class, the one that came afterwards. And she said, he was all freaking out because of that. And he was going, and he said, he came up and talked to you. And then he came back and he was all excited and everything. He's not even a computer science major, but he was in my class. So if they can point their solution and explain it, I just give them the points. That's real easy. Now, if you have a ton of students doing this and they all come back and they can explain it, it's going to take a lot of time, right? Fortunately, I have a small number, right? But if they can't understand it, then, I mean, they got to be able to explain it, right? But that's kind of my experience that I had of doing this stuff. Any questions? Thoughts? Yes.
Some compare program.
For the only one I know of is that one for computer science that I had. And it's specifically for programming because it analyzes the structure. It doesn't analyze. So they could put any names in there. It wouldn't matter. It'd be gibberish. As long as the structure matches, it matches it. So, any other questions?
Statement to make.
Sure.
Just based off this question, it's just like, if you have like a written assignment in your classes, I know you do like computer programming, and it sounds to me like you do this in your classes too, just based on what you said. If you do orienting tasks toward that thing before they actually complete the full assignment, because I think if you have like a long paper or a huge project at the end of a class, and they haven't really been taking steps to get to that end result, it really does kind of get them into a state of, oh my goodness, I've got to write this paper. And then they start looking for ways, like shortcuts and stuff. But like, if you build into your classes where, like, maybe they've already like completed an outline, maybe they've already found their sources. Or like in your case, you've got them doing like small programs that's actually building towards that big, more complicated program that they're gonna run at the end. Then I think you actually are helping the students, get to that final result without having to resort to, cheating. I mean, obviously, you're giving an example where even on the easiest days, I gave a quiz not too long ago where I told the students it's not for a grade and people still cheated. And I was like,
Yeah.
right, like, don't cheat yourself, and so, so I get cheaters are gonna cheat, but at the same time, like, as instructors, like, we can kind of tailor the learning experiences that kind of help them where, I was telling a couple of my colleagues even, I was like, I built one week where students had to submit a rough draft to the writing center, and they got a grade for that, because, no offense, Aiden, I twist their arms and they don't come unless it's like, I give them points for it or something. And so, so I think that sometimes it's like the orienting tasks that you put, or, some people call it scaffolding. They're actually leading them to like, oh, I've already written my thesis statement. Oh, I already found my sources. Oh, I wrote an outline. Like, it's pretty easy to write a paper by that point. Or like in your case, if I've already learned how to do all these programming for these smaller things, I'm just putting them all together now. That should be easy to do.
And I actually try to do that. So what I've tried to do in my fundamentals 2 and 3 class is teach a concept, write a program, teach another concept, modify that program with that new concept, teach another concept, modify that. And by the end, you have something like maybe something keep track of library books or something, right? But it's little pieces at a time where we talk about things in class. And I give them time and I tell them, help each other. Sometimes I give them time in class. If you don't understand it, help the other person, right? Because you're going to learn to do that. Because my whole thing is I want them to learn this stuff, right? So I want them to have a reason to learn it and not to shortcut and cheat. So yeah, doing little pieces like that is very helpful. So in examples, I had one student ask me, when you just use like X or Y for something, it's really confusing. Can you use names instead? And I go, that's easy. So I'm trying to, I'm doing an example and go, okay, I'm not going to use X or Y. I'm going to call it something, right? So I learned from the students too. Try to keep that rapport to learn from them and find out, well, how are you using AI, right? And go, yeah, that's a good way to use it. Or, okay, let's show this. Awesome.
Thank you. Final perspective today is from C.W. Harrell. He's with the Business and Entrepreneurship Pathway. Awesome.
All right, while Todd gets situated, I'm going to first describe to y'all a very nightmare scenario. I would like for you to picture that it's learning day, and you've been asked to speak, and you're the very last speaker to speak, and you realize you're the only speaker without a PowerPoint. That's where I was while Professor James was speaking. So I did what a lot of our students would do. I went to ChatGPT. I uploaded my outline of what I'm going to be speaking on, and we're about to see the ChatGPT output for it. So, okay. All right. Now, it is not as polished as my normal work, but in a pinch, it's going to work just fine. Okay, so just to begin with, for those of you who don't know me, I'm C.W. Harrell. I'm over business and entrepreneurship here at the college. I am going to be citing some business examples, but also I'm an attorney by trade too, and so I'm going to try and bring in some legal examples as well to go through. With that being said, everything I'm saying is not considered legal advice, and advising you should not go through. Okay, all right. So, all right. I'm no expert. I am just like every single one of you, trying to figure out how can I integrate this into my classroom. I will just kind of begin with a few generic things. First of all, I've played around with several different models. The one I tend to use the most is ChatGPT. The big thing with it tells you what it wants you or thinks you want to hear. You should play around with this. If you ask it, how can I make $500,000 a year? It will tell you how you're going to make $500,000 a year. It kind of comes out like a pyramid scheme at the Ramada Inn, but it's very much, this is what you wanted to hear. It's not necessarily truthful. You have to go through and evaluate it. A couple things, because I do kind of go through and try and read where is this going to go, particularly as it pertains to daily life. One of the main goals is the AI agent. And really, I don't know how that's going to impact education directly, but I'll go through and explain it. I hate apps on my phone. I absolutely despise them. I was at the car wash in Anna the other day, and to go through that particular car wash, you have to have the app. Well, as I'm trying to scan the app, I'd logged out, so I had to log back in. It required two-factor authentication, so I had to go to my email. I hate apps. The goal of the AI agent is to switch to where we're not necessarily using apps in our daily life. Instead, we have an AI agent who most likely we've named. That's actually very common. People name them. Mine's named Winston. There, I said it. And so you go through and you say, Winston, I'm hungry. Order Chipotle burrito. Pick it up at Sherman, Texas. Extra guac. They forgot that last time. It'll be ready at 1:15. Use Apple Pay. And I just go to Chipotle and there it is. I'm not logging into an app. I'm not going through anything. It is working on behalf of me as like my personal assistant. To me, that's exciting because, like I said, I hate apps. For the business world, what that means is the customer may not be choosing the business. Instead, the customer's AI assistant will be choosing the business. And that's a whole different marketing class that we could get into. But there's certainly some things to go through there. All right, now let's see. Oh yeah, this is where I said I'm not an expert. So, okay, good. AI daily life. Here we are. We're caught up now. So another use of it, and I'm throwing this out for the health science people, which I'm really out of my depth, but I'm going to throw this out here. One of my friends runs Ironmans and does Ironman competitions pretty regularly. He discovered that through the data from his Garmin watch, plus regular, every 3 to 4 month blood draws, and also a stand on a body mass index, body composition, BMI calculator, he can go through and create these as PDFs, upload them to ChatGPT, and monitor his health. And so each week it goes through, it receives its sleep data, it receives his training data, even dietary if he's inputted that, and he is able to create his own version of his electronic medical records through ChatGPT. Very interesting to go through when you're going, especially as a triathlete, trying to compete and getting all of those macros and things that I have not thought about since I got married. But all of those things you can go through and implement into daily life. The other thing that, because everyone has touched on this, it's not necessarily going to lead to the panic of, oh, everyone's going to get fired or mass layoffs. What it may do is slow down future hirings, replacement hirings in particular. It's shifting from the quality of applicant versus reduced quantity of jobs. We are now getting to where everyone has the basic knowledge. Now we want the expert who can go through and discern the truth. And so I think that's what we have to keep in mind, which is a great segue into the academic. A general viewpoint, and I do not know whether this is true or not, is that AI capability is doubling every 6 months. And if this trend continues, the ability of AI to handle complex long-term tasks, like a 40-hour work week, could arrive sooner than most forecasts. It's AI that's saying it's doubling every 6 months. So again, assessing the validity of it. But if you do even a simple Google search, you will find through numerous sources that that is the relative marker. Every 6 months, it's doubling in its capability. What that means for us is things that we implement in our classrooms here in spring of 2026 may not work in fall of 2026 and would be obsolete come 2028. If it is truly doubling at that type of capacity, we have to stay abreast with it and try and create learning frameworks that go right along with its capability. Now, previously, for my class, like many of yours, it was structured where students were given a prompt and then they produced some type of work product to demonstrate comprehension, and that's what we graded on. AI is shifting that to where entry-level production is done, whether that be in the classroom or the job site. So the example I'm going to pull is the paralegal example. Yay, paralegals. We don't have that program here, and it's becoming more and more obsolete. Thank you, AI. An attorney can go through and upload a client file. Maybe it's emails from the client, maybe it's notes that they've handwritten, whatever it may be, and say draft a motion to dismiss for Grayson County following all the appropriate rules. Ta-da, it drafts it. Well, that was a paralegal's job in the past. Now it's up to the attorney to go through and review for accuracy. Well, if we look at that model, shifting it throughout education, the need for paralegals have gone away, but now the need for attorneys are greater. And since it's instantaneous and they're not having to pay that salary, they're now able to bill it to the client at a ridiculous amount, and everyone's happy, right? That's the paralegal example, but it comes to a practical sense of why would I even hire that position if the attorney can automate it and do it himself? Now, looking at it from the classroom is students must evaluate. AI does not remove rigor, it relocates it to an evaluation standpoint. Went through that. All right. This is really where I've kind of been grappling with this in my own class, and it's time variation and pressure. I've heard mention of using things like Lockdown Browser, and you can certainly do that. Lord knows I do it. I would say the caveat to that, make sure you're watching the Lockdown Browser videos. Students have ChatGPT on their phone. So I've actually worked and seen where a student was typing an answer in Lockdown Browser, but they're constantly looking to their left because they're referencing ChatGPT on their phone. That student ended up failing my course, even though we went through and talked through it. It ends up being a crutch that they are relying on. So if we're looking at time variation and pressure, I want you to think of it from one hand, yes, the academic side, but also the limitations of ChatGPT. Time. AI struggles with maintaining consistency over time, all right? If I give a student a prompt and say, I want you to create a market analysis, and it goes to ChatGPT and it does that market analysis. If I return 3 days later in that same thread and say, all right, student, how would your analysis change if interest rates go up? Well, because of the way that a lot of these AI platforms are web-based, the data in the world has changed. And so what that student might have created as work product on day one, 3 days later, it's actually a different scenario globally, but also different even in just the way the student is communicating. The student has learned things over those 3 days. Maybe they attended my class and had a few light bulb moments, God willing. And then they go through and all of a sudden it is a completely different line of questioning. And with these language models, that's very, very important. So if you can go through and try and see, all right, if the student is able to adapt in that time and answer, then ta-da, they understand it. If they're not able to adapt and answer over that time, they don't understand it and we have to reassess. The other one is variation. AI struggles with applying knowledge across contexts. So if I say, student, I want you to go through and analyze a retail company, and it goes through ChatGPT with this, and I say, great, now move that to a healthcare type facility. Those are two different contexts that ChatGPT does not know how to compute. They're too different. It is apples and oranges. So for the student to be able to go in there and evaluate, it makes a big difference. And then lastly is pressure. Being able to say, student in real-time defense, quick interactive questioning, explaining using dynamic reasoning, that type of thing, AI is not very well equipped at. Particularly explaining it in just down-to-earth common folk examples. AI does not have that sense of humor brought in, and it cannot do that. The good thing about pressure, particularly for Gen Z, I don't know about your students, but mine are not the best at communicating. I give a semester project and they're like deers in the headlight. They are scared to death to speak in front of a group. Where when I was going through school, not that long ago, it was very common for us to go through and interact and everyone was an extrovert. Now it's kind of flipped. Going through and creating pressure scenarios where they have to give a 2-minute defense of their answer, that requires them to engage in those communication skills and hopefully flip that as well. Overall, in our implementation, I do not see the need to completely rebuild a course. I have not completely thrown away stuff and started a course from scratch. Instead, I try and add small layers to reveal thinking. Okay. For instance, like the 2-minute defense. If you can go through and I can understand that in 2 minutes, then yes, you understand the prompt and we can move along. Practically speaking, you can go through and have several different types of assignments. Return to your work prompts. That is a great one, particularly with ChatGPT and time. If it's having to go through and return to its work, then obviously there's been a lag there and it may not be the exact same. Delayed follow-up questions, what if scenarios? Zoom transcripts are also a great tool. So if you've ever proctored an exam orally through Zoom, it's great because it produces an AI output transcript of what was said during that Zoom call. Well, if a student is able to do a 2-minute or a 5-minute defense over a big project where I understand they have full knowledge of the subject matter, I now have a Zoom transcript that I can pair with that and submit it as work product saying, yes, I know for a fact this student has comprehension. Okay. And then there was several questions pertaining to practice questions earlier in the day. And one of the things I've found is you can upload, for the most part, the ISBN number of your textbook into ChatGPT and say, make multiple choice questions off of just chapter 1. That is a great resource. If you're trying to expand it to where it's the infinite amount, yeah, you're going to have a lot of contradictory information. But if you limit it to an actual finite atmosphere of just this chapter, students are able to go through and do that. All right. Questions? See, I'm the, oh, all right. I was like, all right. Yes, sir. Well, so first of all, I'm using Cengage for a lot of my product. Okay. All right. So you can go through and upload Cengage ISBN number textbooks. It will not go through and give you the multiple choice questions that are like the pre-made quizzes or anything like that. I have not seen that. Instead, it's more assess this for vocabulary terms. It would be very similar to like Study Blue or something like that that we used to see in the past where students would have flashcards that they could assess their own comprehension. Yeah. Okay. Other questions?
Use this in your legal practice?
Yes, absolutely. I use it all the time. So I mentioned just briefly going through like the case file to where you can upload different stuff. I have previous clients who were in a dispute down in Austin and they were techie guys. I mean, it was a contract dispute over their work product as computer programmers or something like that. To be honest, I don't have a full comprehension of what they do, and I never will. They gave me all of this technical language, and I put it all into PDFs, and I uploaded it, and I said, explain this to me like I'm a 4th grader, right? Well, okay, it's just a contract dispute. I've got that. I can go through and I can work with that all day long. Aside from that, advertisements. Absolutely, in which AT did a far better job than what I would be able to in terms of that. You can do a world of good with family photos. We had some pictures taken that were semi-professional, but they didn't show me in the best light. I wanted to be a little slimmer, a little taller, and a few things like that. And so with just a few quick manipulations, man, I looked good. So you can certainly do that for advertisements. you do have to kind of assess because it does hallucinate. I have taken old family black and white photos, and this is really cool to do, uploading black and white photos of family members, my grandparents from like the 20s and the 30s, okay? And you can colorize them and make them awesome. Sometimes they have 11 toes. You have to figure out, wait a second, and be very critical because it does hallucinate and sometimes do other add-ons. So yeah, okay. Any other questions? Okay, well, I'm the last presenter, and before y'all turn into a group of farmers with pitchforks, I think we're finished. There you go. Todd, I'll turn it over to you.
I'll get you to the food as soon as possible. So we are recording this over Zoom. We really wanted our adjuncts to be able to experience it as well, but it'll also be posted. It'll be edited and then posted in Canvas, so you can see parts of it again. It'll have time points, so you'll be able to go to specific time points you want to focus on. Note at 1 o'clock is a very interesting experience, a sound journey facilitated by Allison Trapp. That'll be in the band hall. And these, I'm trying to think of where I've been for these. I'm trying to think of words for them. They've been profound and healing for me and very relaxing. They're quite an experience if you've never been to a sound journey. Imagine 5 gongs relaxing you. If you can. You have to experience it. Thank you, Dr. McAlvich, for making the trip all the way from Phoenix, including so far not bad TSA time checkpoint. So yeah, and a lot of information today. Keep dialoguing with me. I do it. I can do what I can do what I do with AI because you all talk to me about your understanding of AI and how it's going. So that really helps me a lot. And see you next year right here at this time.